Kevin Costner, the timeless icon of the American West. The man who can make the whole world fall silent every time he appears on screen turns out to carry in his heart the deep pain of betrayal. His first marriage fell apart in a way he had never been prepared for. The woman who once stood by him through his hardest years ended up pulling him into a spiral of lawsuits to claim the very wealth he had built with his own hands. Kevin once believed those ruins were his final wound until he met Christine, the woman he trusted to be his peaceful harbor after countless storms. Yet at the very moment he placed his greatest trust, he discovered that she had been secretly involved with a neighbor whom they had both considered a close friend. Now at the age of 68, Kevin unexpectedly reveals the greatest regret of his life. Across decades, despite having gone through many relationships, there has only ever been one woman he never stopped loving. And because he lost her, his heart has been left with a void that no one has ever been able to fill. But the most shocking part is, it is not the person everyone assumes. So what is it that made Kevin Costner carry that shadow throughout his glorious yet lonely life? Let's explore the complex journey of love of this Western legend in this video. Behind the dazzling glow of Oscar statuettes beyond the film set lights that seem never to dim, Kevin Costner's love life is in fact a labyrinth filled with unfinished crossroads and wounds that never had the chance to heal. Few people know that amid all that glory, he has always carried within him empty spaces that even time cannot mend. Because before Hollywood called his name, before audiences came to know a strong, free-spirited, and resolute Kevin, there was a woman who left an indelible mark on his life. The first person who taught his heart what it meant to spark with love, what it meant to lose, and what it meant to feel at peace. That woman was Cindy Silva. Kevin Costner and Cindy Silva met in 1975 when they were both students at California State University, Fullerton. At the time, Costner was just 20 years old, an ambitious young man still struggling to find his path into acting, while Cindy was someone he himself described as far more intelligent than me. They were quickly drawn to each other. In an interview with People magazine in 1989, Costner recalled that he liked Cindy from the very first moment he saw her so much that he wanted to show her off to my parents immediately. Their first date took place in 1976 when Costner invited her to see the classic musical film Funny Girl. It was an emotional evening filled with the bittersweet melodies of Barbra Streisand, and it marked the official beginning of a pure and youthful college romance. Over the next 3 years, they dated steadily and grew deeply attached. Cindy was always Costner's greatest support during his early struggles in Hollywood. He worked all kinds of jobs from a driver to a stagehand while she worked at Disneyland as Snow White, and took on extra odd jobs to help them make ends meet. Even though Costner had not yet landed any significant roles, Cindy never doubted his dream. In 1978, right after graduating from college, they married in a simple ceremony in Orange County, California. At that moment, both Costner and Cindy believed they would walk hand in hand until the very end. During the early years of their marriage, they had only each other to rely on, standing side by side against the world. Their marriage grew more fulfilling as they built a home together. 3 children were born, one after another, Annie, Lily, and Joe, bringing laughter, joy, and hope for the future. At that time, Kevin was still taking his first steps in his acting career, while Cindy served as his emotional anchor, the one who kept the family united and peaceful. By 1991, Costner had become one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, earning $50 million in just 1 year. From a modest home in Hollywood, their family moved into luxurious mansions, living a life that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. However, along with fame, everything gradually began to shift when Kevin rose to prominence through The Untouchables' Bull Durham and Field of Dreams. Costner was constantly away from home, for months at a time filming in distant locations. Meanwhile, Cindy stayed behind, caring for their 3 young children and slowly feeling lonely within her own large house. Their friends later recalled that although they still spoke normally, they no longer behaved like a true family. Cindy had hoped things would improve if her husband reduced his schedule, but that never happened. The final straw came with rumors of Costner's infidelity during the filming of Waterworld in Hawaii. At the time, many sources claimed he had a romantic involvement with a local hula dancer named Michelle Amaral. Although Costner never publicly admitted it, images and accounts from the film crew eventually reached Cindy. In November 1994, after exactly 16 years of marriage, Cindy quietly filed for divorce in Orange County, California, citing irreconcilable differences. The divorce lasted several months and became one of the most expensive separations in Hollywood at the time. Because there was no prenuptial agreement, Cindy received approximately $80 million US dollars, an enormous sum in 1994. The two issued a brief joint statement. "We have amicably resolved all issues regarding our children and financial matters." Later on, Costner admitted in multiple interviews, "I take responsibility for my part in this breakup, and no one wants their marriage to end, but ours did." However, emotional wounds are not something that can ever be measured or weighed. Kevin Costner admitted that after that divorce, his sense of trust shook like an old door on the verge of being blown open by the wind. He was not only referring to marriage, but also to himself, to the image of a simple, grounded hero he had painstakingly built, only to quietly watch it crack behind the scenes of his own life. His children became small witnesses to that pain, caught between two worlds they had never had the right to choose. After parting ways with Cindy, Kevin fell into a prolonged and heavy silence. His career faced many fluctuations. His personal life became entangled and his heart closed off like a room with all the lights turned out. He met a few women trying to find a bit of warmth to fill the emptiness, but no one truly reached the deepest layers of his complex soul. It was as if Kevin still could not or did not yet have the courage to open his heart once again, not after the wounds left so deep by past breakups. It was only when Bridget Rooney appeared that door slowly began to open. Bridget, the granddaughter of the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was not only beautiful and independent, but also radiated a captivating confidence that drew Kevin in like a traveler finding fresh water in a barren desert. From their very first meeting, he looked at her for a long time, his eyes still carrying a trace of doubt, but also flickering with a rare sense of hope. "I've never met anyone like you," he said, his voice both sincere and slightly trembling. Bridget simply smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with a hint of playful mischief. "Then let's see if you have the courage to step into my world." They began dating, going through days that were both passionate and full of challenges. It was a period when Kevin wanted to heal his heart after a broken marriage, while also longing to rediscover the feeling of closeness and warmth in a new relationship. Bridget, fully aware that he was a Hollywood star with a complicated and busy life, still chose to step into that world with both excitement and caution. "We'll be okay, right?" Bridget once asked as they walked together, and Kevin nodded, as if believing that all obstacles were only temporary trials. As their relationship progressed, Bridget became pregnant and gave birth to Liam Costner in November 1996. This event marked a major turning point, but also brought considerable turbulence. At first, Kevin did not officially acknowledge Liam as his son, which led Bridget to request a DNA test. When the results confirmed their biological relationship, he accepted Liam and set up a trust fund for his future. Even so, Kevin once said, "I will do everything to make sure my son is not hurt," a promise that was both reassuring and revealing of a father's uncertainty in an unusual situation. Their relationship did not last long. After Liam was born, Bridget mainly focused on raising their child and gradually withdrew from the glamorous world of Hollywood, while Kevin continued pursuing film projects and his demanding career. The distance between them grew, and eventually they parted ways peacefully and respectfully, each continuing on their own path. Later on, Bridget Rooney built a new life, marrying billionaire Bill Koch in 2005, while Liam grew up in a private environment, staying away from the media spotlight. Kevin, despite being busy with his career and personal projects, maintained a father-son relationship with Liam, though he did not often make it public. Even so, Kevin once shared that this experience taught him many lessons about responsibility, love, and maturity. "Sometimes short-lived relationships teach us more than long marriages," he said, his voice calm yet filled with reflection. That story, though, in the past, remains deeply imprinted as an inseparable part of his life. What is painful is that although new women continued to enter Kevin Costner's life, all of them seemed only able to soothe part of the emptiness tearing inside him, never truly filling it. People saw him smile, saw him walking beside another beautiful woman, But no one truly understood that behind that glow was a cold loneliness he could not name. At times, friends would catch Kevin sitting in deep thought, his gaze fixed on the distance, and they understood that in those moments his mind did not belong to the present. It was drifting back to the past, to the woman he once called home. Those closest to him have always said that Kevin never stopped thinking about Cindy. It may sound like an exaggeration, but to those who know him best, it is a harsh truth he has silently carried throughout his life. Even though that marriage was not perfect, even though they went through countless wounds, arguments, and irreparable crossroads, he still remembers. He remembers the simple and sincere love of their youth, a kind of love that had not yet been scrutinized by the media, weighed down by fame, or stained with exhaustion. He remembers the days when they had nothing but each other, facing hardships together with faith, and a warmth that only two kindred hearts could truly understand. There was once in a rare moment of vulnerability when Kevin blurted out to a friend, "I've gone so far, but sometimes I just want to go back to where it all began, where Cindy still looked at me with eyes full of trust." That statement left his friend silent for a long time because it was not just regret, it was a confession from a man who once believed he could find that feeling again, somewhere else with someone else, only to realize in the end that the emptiness kept growing. Someone once asked him, "Do you still love Cindy?" Kevin merely pressed his lips together and gave a faint, sad smile without answering. Yet that silence carried more weight than any admission. The most painful part is that he understands he has lost a love that perhaps comes only once in a lifetime. He confronts that emptiness by throwing himself into work, into fleeting relationships, into the noise of Hollywood, but the more crowded it becomes, the lonelier he feels. Longtime friends. Those who witnessed his journey from an unknown young man to a star still whisper to each other. No one can replace Cindy in Kevin's heart. No one. After a series of stumbles in both his love life and career, Kevin Costner entered a phase of life where everything seemed to grow unbearably heavy. Waterworld was a crushing failure, and The Postman caused his reputation to decline rapidly. The man who once stood at the pinnacle of Hollywood suddenly felt lost with no home to return to and no shoulder left to lean on. In those dark days, Kevin felt more deeply than ever the emptiness of a life missing its one true anchor. Cindy, the person who had once brought him his greatest sense of peace. Then in 1998, fate brought Christine Baumgartner into his life. 20 years younger than him, she was both a model and a handbag designer, possessing a gentle demeanor that concealed an inner strength. To Kevin, Christine's presence was like a ray of sunlight slipping into a long-closed room. In her, he saw not only a companion, but also the hope of healing, of being loved again, and of starting over. After years of carrying Cindy's shadow in his heart, this was the first time he truly believed he could let go of the old pain. He told himself, "Maybe this is the one who will help me move forward." And for the first time in a long while, he dared to believe that he deserved a new happiness. Yet Kevin had no idea that this trust would eventually be betrayed once again. Christine and Kevin first met on a sunlit afternoon in 1996 on a lush green golf course in California. At the time, Kevin had just stepped out of the ashes of his 16-year marriage to Cindy Silva, while Christine stood there with a golf bag slung over her shoulder. It was just a fleeting glance, a polite smile. Yet Costner's heart, long grown cold, stirred ever so slightly. They did not talk much, merely exchanged greetings before going their separate ways. No one could have imagined that it would mark the beginning of a story that would span nearly 2 decades, only to shatter like crystal falling onto cold stone. 2 years later, in 1998, fate brought them together again at a small seaside restaurant. By then, Costner was divorced, had gone through a few brief relationships, and even had a son out of wedlock whom he was not yet ready to acknowledge. Christine was still beautiful now, even sharper and more confident. They talked late into the night. She laughed as he told stories about filming The Postman in the desert while he quietly watched her as if trying to reclaim a lost part of his soul. That night, Costner drove her home, stopping in front of her house in Santa Barbara, and softly said, "You know, I've been waiting a long time for this reunion." Christine simply smiled, but deep down, she knew she had been waiting too. They began dating like two people trying to escape themselves. Costner took her to his ranch in Aspen, where snow blanketed the mountains, a place where he once dreamed of spending his life with his first wife. Christine taught him how to slow down, how to love a woman without needing to prove that he was a star. From the very beginning, she was straightforward with him. "If you want to be with me, you have to understand that children are the goal. I won't wait forever." But Costner hesitated. He already had 4 children, was exhausted with the responsibilities of fatherhood, and believed he would never return to the days of changing diapers. In 2002, they broke up. Kevin admitted he was not ready while Christine quietly gathered her pain and left Aspen. 3 weeks later, Costner drove through the night to her house, standing in the rain, drenched, and said only one sentence, "I can't live without you." Christine opened the door, tears silently falling. It was the first time she had seen him cry in front of her. On September 25th, 2004, in a lush green field in Aspen, they held their wedding. That day, a gentle breeze swept across the vast mountains as if embracing the sky. And Christine's radiant smile was enough to make people believe that all wounds could be healed. Kevin arrived in a horse-drawn carriage, while she appeared in a vintage blue car, a scene as beautiful as a perfect ending. As he watched her approach, his heart seemed to skip a beat. Holding her hand, he softly said, "We'll be okay, won't we?" Christine smiled, but within that smile lingered something fragile. 3 years later, Caden was born. 2 years after that came Hayes, and a year later Grace. Their large home in Carpinteria was filled with children's laughter. Costner once told the press, "Christine gave me a real family, not the family of a movie star, but that of an ordinary man." They were once so happy that it made people believe it would last forever. But the stage lights never truly went out. When Yellowstone entered his life, it swept him away like a storm. Kevin spent months away from home, returning less and less, carrying with him exhaustion and distance. Meanwhile, Christine stayed behind with their 3 children and long nights in their vast mansion. She still smiled on the red carpet at the 2022 Oscars, still held her husband's hand tightly. But in her eyes, there was a visible weariness that could not be named. Then the arguments began, starting from the smallest things. Kevin forgot a child's birthday while filming, and Christine accused him of living as though he no longer belonged to the family. He lashed out, saying everything he did was for them. She replied, her voice trembling, "I don't need the money, I need you at home." But neither was willing to give in. The initial crack, once small, slowly widened into a deep divide, separating 2 people who once sat side by side every evening. On May 1st, 2023, Christine officially filed for divorce with a single brief line, "Irreconcilable differences." At that moment, Kevin was filming in Las Vegas and received the news through his assistant, feeling as though he had been abruptly pulled out of reality. He immediately called his lawyer, his voice filled with disbelief. "She really did that?" But no one could give him an answer. The woman who once stood waiting for him in the rain now wanted to leave his life forever. News about Kevin Costner quickly flooded newspapers and social media, leaving fans stunned beyond belief. One of Hollywood's most private couples, once seen as a symbol of quiet happiness, was now facing tragedy in the public eye, something no one could have prepared for. The legal battle began cold as a blade. Christine requested $248,000 per month in child support, while Kevin insisted he could only afford $38,000. She refused to leave their shared home, and he filed a complaint over her taking belongings. The press immediately seized the story with a barrage of sensational headlines. Ex-wife strikes back at Kevin Costner. Christine Baumgartner demands money from the star. The love that once had them holding hands in the mountains of Aspen was now reduced to legal documents written in cold, impersonal lines. They faced each other in a courtroom in Santa Barbara throughout the summer of 2023. Kevin in a black suit, his eyes reddened as if there were still words left unsaid. Christine sat a few meters away, distant and unmoving like a statue. The judge set the support at $63,209, lower than what she wanted, but higher than what he believed he could bear. By September, they signed the final agreement. Neither looked at the other, not a smile, not even a nod. only a heavy silence that seemed to bury 18 years of togetherness. On February 16th, 2024, the divorce decree was officially stamped. 18 years of love ended with a dry, final sound. Just a few weeks later, Christine left Carpinteria, walking beside Josh Connor, their former neighbor and once a close friend to both of them. They traveled to Hawaii together while the divorce proceedings were not yet fully completed. By October 2025, Christine wore a wedding dress once again this time, in a field of flowers and Santa Ynez radiant beside her new partner. That invitation never reached Kevin. As for him, he remained in a house so large that every footstep echoed like the sound of loss. His 3 young children moved back and forth between 2 homes while he tried to smile whenever they asked, "Are you okay, Dad?" He would answer, "I'm fine." But when night fell, he turned on the TV just to push away the silence. On national television, in a conversation with Gayle King, his voice broke. "This is the first time I've truly been crushed. I didn't lose money. I lost the woman who made me believe I was a good man." Kevin still keeps his wedding ring in the bedside drawer. Sometimes he opens it, glances at it briefly, then quickly shuts it again, as if one more second would unleash a flood of memories and drown him. In that overly large house, only the size of a man remain a man who has loved, who has erred, who has lost, and who does not know how to fill the final emptiness in his life. After all the deep wounds in love, Kevin threw himself into work. He began the Horizon Project, a Western film he had nurtured for many years, an epic about legacy and the spirit of America. Cameras captured every moment of him directing, yet in his mind he was still struggling with the void in his personal life. "I'm telling a story about courage, but I also have to find the strength to keep living." Kevin once shared in an interview, his voice low but filled with determination. Now Kevin Costner quietly steps into a new chapter of his life, like a man still carrying the chill of wounds that have yet to heal. And then Kelly Noonan Gores appears, a 46-year-old woman with a gentle smile, but eyes that conceal past heartbreak. She is a documentary filmmaker, a warm voice in healing podcasts, and a single mother to 6-year-old Riley. She once had what seemed like a perfect life: a mansion overlooking Manhattan Beach, a peaceful marriage with billionaire Alec Gores, until the Pacific Palisades fire reduced her home to ashes, and in the same breath burned down 8 years of their marriage. Kevin and Kelly met in the spring of 2025, at a time when both were still struggling to gather the largest broken pieces of their lives. Kevin had just emerged from a legal battle that had drained him both financially and emotionally. Kelly, meanwhile, had lost both her home and the man she once believed would walk beside her for the rest of her life. They first met in Aspen, where Kevin kept the Dunbar Ranch as a final refuge for his deeply exhausted soul. Friends say they had only planned to sit together for a few minutes over coffee, but the conversation stretched through the entire afternoon and into the evening until they both lost track of time. They talked about their children, about long sleepless nights, and about the fear of trusting again after having lost so much. Over time, they began seeing each other more often without ever planning it. Kevin stayed in Aspen longer than expected, while Kelly also found herself returning there frequently to escape the noisy lights of the city. They never labeled their relationship, yet a quiet closeness seeped into every moment. Short morning jogs, evenings sharing tea as the air turned colder, or fleeting touches they both pretended not to notice. In truth, both were afraid that saying anything out loud might cause everything to shatter. Kevin once told a close friend that being around Kelly made even breathing feel easier. It was not an overwhelming passion or a lightning strike kind of love, but a gentle warmth from someone who asked nothing of him. Kelly understood that completely. She knew Kevin had just gone through a painful legal battle, knew he still carried a heavy heart whenever he thought about his children. So she did not push, did not probe too deeply. She gave him exactly what he needed: most peace. They shared many things in common: a love for nature, for animals, for long walks. But what bonded them most was that both were trying to rebuild their lives after losses too deep to fully name. Once sitting in a quiet valley, Kelly softly said, as if speaking to the wind, "I'm not looking for someone to fill the emptiness. I just want to be with someone who makes me feel lighter." Kevin smiled, a trace of sadness in his eyes. "I'm not sure I can be that person, but I want to try. Paparazzi only managed to capture a rare moment of them together over Labor Day weekend at the JS Music Festival in Snowmass. Kevin wore a black sweater and dark pants, his graying hair under the sunset making him look even more worn. Kelly stood a few meters away in a short black dress and denim jacket, smiling as she talked with friends. They did not touch, did not exchange any embraces in front of the cameras, yet their gazes instinctively drifted toward each other like two lost souls who had found a safe place. One of Kevin's close friends said it was the first time in a long while that he smiled, not to please the cameras. Yet no matter how beautiful their connection was, they still had to face the challenge of distance. Carpinteria and Manhattan Beach are more than 160 kilometers apart. Not a short journey for hearts already worn out. Kelly was busy with her podcast and rebuilding her life after the fire, while Kevin was occupied with the post-production of Horizon and caring for his children as they adjusted to life between two homes. But whenever they had the chance to meet, they kept everything simple, as if the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. By December 2025, their relationship remained just like that. No rings, no promises, no public declarations, yet deeply meaningful in a way that needed no words. People say this is Kevin Costner's most beautiful love story at the age of 70 because it is as quiet as the late afternoon sunlight in California. A kind of love that needs no proof. Simply two people who had once lost everything finding each other in rare moments of peace. And when they stand beside each other without touching, without speaking, only exchanging soft smiles, one can clearly see that even hearts that have been burned to ashes can glow again if they meet the right person to warm them. In the later years of his life, as the noise of fame gradually faded into the background, Kevin Costner finally found the courage to face the greatest emptiness within his heart. In a recent interview in November 2025, he openly admitted that for many years he had been deceiving himself with fleeting relationships, distant travels, and films that helped him temporarily forget his loneliness. But in the end, no matter what the person he loved most deeply was still Cindy, his first wife. I've loved many times, but only when I was with Cindy did I truly feel at peace. This was not merely the lingering sentiment of someone clinging to the past, but the honest voice of a heart that had endured so much and had finally chosen to open itself. Kevin gradually came to realize that some wounds can only heal when we dare to face our own emotions. And in long, sleepless nights, he found his way back to Cindy Silva, the woman who had built his first home with him, who had ridden bicycles beside him under the golden sunsets of their youth, the one his heart had never truly let go of. Their conversations unfolded slowly, like a stream of memories flowing back to life, and gradually became more frequent. Not to rekindle what once was, but simply to rediscover a bit of the warmth of a place once called home. Cindy listened to him with the calmness and gentleness of someone who had already moved beyond old pain. She did not blame, did not question, but simply stayed beside him and said simple things, Kevin. You've been stronger than you think. For Kevin, just that presence was enough to make the world around him feel a little less cold. At times he would choke up and admit, I miss the way you looked at me, like I was a good man. But life is not a fairy tale. Cindy had her own life now, a new family, a different love, one peaceful enough for her to smile without looking back. Even though Kevin tried to stay in touch, even though he cherished every rare moment they shared, loneliness quietly grew within him like darkness spreading when the lights go out. He understood that time had carried them far apart, each in their own direction, and that despite having once loved each other deeply, they could not return to the same path. Even so, the connection between them never completely disappeared. Amid lives that had changed their friendship remained like the last trace of warmth from a once burning flame. They talked about their children, about work, about evenings long ago when they had nothing but hope. Sometimes Cindy would laugh while recalling small memories, and Kevin would treasure each of those moments as something precious. To him, it was not just memory, it was the most beautiful part of his life. Kevin came to understand that happiness does not lie in trying to return to what has been lost, but in knowing that you once had it and truly cherished it. In the end, he chose to move forward, not because he had forgotten Cindy, but because he understood she has her own life. And I have to learn to live mine. Although his heart still remembers Cindy, as it would remember the safest harbor, Kevin no longer seeks to reclaim the past, but instead keeps her in the most beautiful chapter of his memory. And that more than anything brings him a sense of peace in the later years of his life, when the past is no longer a source of pain but becomes a gentle light guiding him forward. Now, at the age of 68, Kevin chooses to return to the things that still make his heart beat: his children, his work, and the peace he has cultivated after life's upheavals that could have broken anyone. Though the wounds from 2 broken marriages still linger, they no longer pull him down. They simply serve as reminders that a heart once hurt can still continue to love. And beside him, Kelly appears as a quiet companion, not replacing the past, but simply walking with him through the present. Kevin's reflections about Cindy have made many people pause. Does he still hold on to the image of the first woman who made him believe in family? But the truth is gentler than that. It is not about holding on, but about learning to reconcile with a part of life that cannot be erased. Kevin understands that his heart still carries the imprint of the past, but that does not mean he lives in it. And from that courage, he finds light in simple things: the smiles of his children, peaceful conversations, and the enduring friendship Cindy still offers him. A different kind of love, quiet yet strong enough to keep him standing. How do you feel about Kevin's story? Do you think that letting go of Cindy so each could find their own happiness was the right choice? And do you believe love still holds another chance for him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss future videos, and click on the video on your screen to continue the journey.